Hello, this is Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative, and I have been in an extreme Christmas mood lately. I really want to put up my Christmas tree and go Christmas crazy. So I had to make a Christmas card yet again for this week. I just can't help myself. I don't know what it is. I guess because it's November now, even though it's still 75 degrees here, I'm feeling very Christmassy. So I hope you don't mind my making another Christmas card. I am using the Hero Arts Holiday Floral background stamp here. This is a stamp that I used in day 4 of my 12 Days of Christmas Cards series this year, but I used it with a non-traditional color palette. So I wanted to instead today use it with a much more traditional color palette of white, red, green, and gold to show you that there is some versatility to the stamp, and I just love it. I think it's gorgeous. Now, I am calling this a Nordic-ish card because the white embossing on the red background really reminds me of Scandinavian holiday decorations. Growing up, my parents have strong ties to Scandinavia. They're Scandinavian descendants, as am I. So we always had Scandinavian decor at Christmas, and so this sort of white on red really reminds me of that and takes me back to Christmas of my childhood, I guess. So hopefully you like it as much as I do. I know even though it's not supposed to be Nordic, I still think that the color scheme of this card winds up making it look Nordic-ish, if you will. Now, I'm heat embossing the white embossing powder that I did stamp the image with white pigment ink, and now the embossing powder sticks to that and has been set with a heat gun. And for some embellishments, I am going to be using the leaves, the flower, the berries, and the pine cone from this Hero Arts color layering dimensional bird set. I will also be using that Happy Holidays greeting that you see up there at the top. For the flowers and the berries, I'm using this dark red ink. It comes in a 4 ink cube set, also from Hero Arts. It's called Holiday Reds. This set comes with a burgundy, a pink, and then 2 reds. This is the darker of the 2 reds, if you are interested. It was the red that was closest to the color of the cardstock. I could not find names for these ink colors, so that's the best description I can give you for that. For the green, I am using, on my leaves, I am using Hero Arts Shadow Ink in Emerald Green. This is, even though it's called a mid-tone in the Shadow Ink line, it's still pretty dark. It's a dark pine green, but it's a bright pine green. I hope that kind of makes sense. It's a very Christmassy green. It's really pretty and goes really well with the color scheme here. It's not a super Kelly green. It's much darker, but it's also very bright. So it's really nice for that. Now for my pine cones, I'm stamping these in Ranger dye ink in Java Bean, which is a very nice dark brown. I wanted to add some dimension to these stamped images, so I'm going to be using my colored pencils to color these a little bit. I do have Lightfast Prismacolor colored pencils, and I found out recently when I was looking for them for the supply list that they are discontinued. So sorry about that. But what I've done is in the supply list, which is linked below in the video description, I have listed out the colors in the regular Prismacolor colors that are as close to the Lightfast colors as I could find. So if you're interested in that information, it is available to you in the supply list. Now to color the flowers and the leaves, I used 2 colors of colored pencil. It's not super sophisticated coloring by any stretch. I'm basically using a color that's as close to the ink color as I could get, which was that first color I was coloring the pencils or coloring the petals with. And now I'm using a darker shade of red to add dimension into the interior and sort of bottoms of the petals themselves. And then I will take that lighter red, which is I'm shown here, and blend it out basically. And in the end, the effect is very subtle, I'll be honest. You have to look pretty hard to even tell that those are colored. However, I do think that it makes a really, really big difference. And you'll see here in a second when I skip ahead, you'll see the finished colored flower next to the stamped flower. And hopefully you can tell there really is a big difference. And the other thing that I liked about it, in addition to like sort of the subtle shadowing that it adds, it also makes them look, I don't know, like a little more handmade or hand finished, hand painted. Something kind of like, it has that feel to it, sort of like Scandinavian decorations do at Christmas. So I felt like it went well with my sort of Nordic theme I had going. Now for the green leaves, I am also using 2 colors. So this is the darker color, and I'm just adding shading in along the veins and the interior of the leaf. And then this is the lighter color that matches the ink, and I'm just blending out that shading a little bit with the lighter color. And that's all there is to this coloring. It is not fancy, it's not sophisticated, but believe me, it does make a difference. It really does add this sort of understated finish to these little stamped images. And then for my pine cones, I am just adding some dark brown shading to the bottoms of, I looked this up, the scales of the pine cones. I didn't know what those things were called. Apparently they are called scales. So that again added some subtle shading to those as well. Now the veins and the little stitching details on the flowers kind of got lost with the coloring, so I added those back in with my white Signo gel pen, and I thought that white detailing was important. It went with sort of the white embossing, as well as kind of pulled out the sort of stitched handmade look of those stamps that went really well with the background floral image. So I really wanted to make sure those were visible. Now for my greeting, I am cutting apart the Happy Holidays greeting that comes with that dimensional bird stamp set. And I know that this kind of freaks some people out because it feels like you're damaging your stamps in some sense. But with clear stamps, this really doesn't do them any harm. Like, you can just fit them right back together and stamp them the way they were originally intended, which for this one was like a horizontal line, but I wanted a stacked greeting for this. So I cut it apart, and it doesn't hurt it at all, I swear. And it gives you a lot more versatility for your clear stamps, because now I could take that happy and I could use it with something else. I could take the holidays and use it with something else. You know, I can stack them as I did here instead of having them in a long horizontal line. So I encourage people to give this a shot. I swear it does not hurt your stamps. And if you're concerned or worried about it, maybe try starting out with a greeting that you don't care so much about and just play with it to see it really is worth doing. So I've trimmed down that red piece to about 4 by 5 1/4. So there's an 1/8 of an inch border all the way around when I'm going to layer it on top of that A2 sized white cardstock base. I wanted to point out on the back of my panel here, there is some messed up stamping because this is from a previous project where I just saved the piece. And although probably most of you are like, obviously you should save cardstock like that, I think there are people out there who maybe just throw it out. Like, you mess up your stamping and you're just like, oh, it's ruined, I'm going to throw it out. Well, no, save it, because you can always use the back. And so I do that with everything. And it saves me money, so I don't have to replace my cardstock because I've thrown it all out when I screw stuff up. And it also is, environmentally friendly because you're not just throwing it in the landfill. So I just wanted to mention that as something to consider. Now, I did cut out some rectangles there. You see, I've got a gold rectangle, and then I cut out the greeting in a white rectangle. I used the My Favorite Things pierced rectangles die set. I think it's like a stacks die set. This has like a subtle pierced like stitching detail around the outside edge, and I thought that looked really good with the sort of stitching detail on those flowers, and that's why I used those. And then I added gold sequins to the centers of my flowers to pick up on the sort of the shiny gold of the rectangle as well as the greeting. And now I'm just going to glue these down with my Zig glue pen. And when I do this, and I do this technique quite a bit, especially when I'm doing like little floral arrangements on cards, I only glue the middles of the pieces. I don't put glue all over the whole thing. for a reason. Now here I'm going to try a foam dot, but I changed my mind and decided it's just too, it's sticking up way too far above all the stacked paper that's already on there. So I pull that off. And again, I just stick my Zig pen in the middle only of that flower. So what happens is by adhering the middles, it keeps it in place, but leaving the edges unadhered creates a very understated shadow effect to that little bouquet, if you will. So it creates, again, like I keep saying subtle, but it is a subtle dimension, but it does make a huge difference. So this is something that you might want to try, because if you're adhering like the whole thing down, it might just get too flat. So if you just put adhesive on the middles, it really does make a difference, and it really creates some interesting and, you know, understated dimension that does create an effect on your card. Now to finish it off, I just added some Tonic Nouveau crystal drops in silver lining. They pick up like the little dots that are in the background image, because that white just seemed unfinished, and I thought the silver like dots really kind of just finished it all off and pulled it all together. And there you can see some of the sort of subtle dimension as well as the coloring going on with the flowers. And that is the completed project for today. I hope you get my Nordic reference that I was going for with it. Now, hopefully I've given you a little inspiration today, maybe ways you can use colored pencils to add dimension to previously stamped images. So thank you so much for watching. I always appreciate it. As always, there is a link to the supply list available below in the video description and on my blog. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. And even better, I would love it if you'd subscribe to my channel or leave me a comment, because I always love to hear from you guys. Thanks, and have a great day.